61年前、一発の原子爆弾が20万人もの市民の命を奪いました。あれから半世紀、人々は憎しみや悲しみを乗り越えて立ち上がり、家を建て、家族を育み、そして町を築き上げました。美しい町に成長したこの中心の被爆の地を、人々は二度とこのような悲劇が起こらないようにという思いを込めてグラウンドゼロと呼びました。けれども世の中、今でも毎日テロや戦争のニュースであふれています。21世紀を迎え、こんなに文明の発展した世の中に住んでいるのに、世の中問題が大変多いです。皆さんはこのような矛盾についてどのようにお考えになりますでしょうか。
The pull and the promise of the future is stronger than the push of the past. It is really an honor and a pleasure for me to be here today, and I wish to commend the extraordinary work of the Junior Chamber for having this gathering. Early this morning, I was taking a walk in the Hiroshima Peace Park. Some of you may be familiar with the different colors that we have in the trees right now. Palm trees, pine trees, there's cedar, oak, there's maple, there's the sakura, and of course, there is the Hiroshima pink oleander. Many of these seeds were given right after the atomic bomb or shortly after, and they come from all over the world, some of them. It always reminds me of what my Sufi teacher used to say: the pull and the promise of the future is stronger than the push of the past. My friends, I have worked all my life for the United Nations, but I think that there are very few places where I have felt that the United Nations flag was more appropriate than to see it next to the dome. Some of you may have seen it next to the dome. The reason for that is that Hiroshima is universal. Its implications are for all of humanity. And maybe that is why we get such an extraordinary people like the panelists today to visit this city. Hiroshima is something of a miracle. Somebody told me recently that he could never live in Hiroshima because he was afraid he would forget the significance of Hiroshima. I could understand what he said, but at the same time I find that Hiroshima is not a sad place. It's a grave place. It has gravity, it has seriousness, it has this past, but it's also a place of hope because of its own resurrection. And in our daily lives, we sometimes forget that we live in a very, very special place. I think for the world today, with all that has been happening in the past weeks and months, Hiroshima is a constant reminder of two possible scenarios for our future. It's a cautionary tale about what we should not do, and it's also a promise that we may be able to resurrect. And I think the choice, as we will discuss over the next 2 days, is probably with us. In closing, I would like to remind some of you of what Stephen Hawking, the Cambridge University mathematician and physicist, said in June in a talk in Hong Kong. He said that he did not believe that human beings will survive the next 100 years. He said that nuclear war, global climate change, or an yet unknown disease would probably destroy our human race as we know it. And his recommendation was to build colonies elsewhere in space. I think, however, we have some time for the choice to make. I think luminaries like the Dalai Lama, the Archbishop Tutu, Betty Williams, and many, many wonderful people who have come to Hiroshima have constantly reminded us that in this place we have the two destinies of human beings untold, and we must make our choices more clearly. I hope that we will make the right choice. In the hope of centuries of autumn breezes in the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, 皆様どうもありがとうございました。
So I think message from here to all over the world, nuclear weapon is terrible. I think since then, 2 bombs, Hiroshima, 1, Nagasaki. I think since then, I think nobody dare to use these awful weapons. So I think you two, this in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, people of these 2, I think, cities, I think really, they send some kind of message. Not just a word, but I think painful experience. That I think really wake up humanity. These destructive weapons, sooner or later, have to eliminate. According to today's reality, our national boundary is not much so important. Important is we have to think about humanity on a global level. So, firstly, what is the meaning of sense of global responsibility? Not only concerning just own family or own community, own country, or own continent, but rather think and take care and take concern of humanity whole. Not by law, but by voluntarily, on the basis of the realization of today's reality. Right? Then, why we need that kind of, global responsibility is, firstly, we human being is a kind of social animal. I think since 1,000 years, human community live as a community. So each individual welfare, well-being depend on the community. So no matter how powerful one individual person, but his or her happy life or successful life depend on the community. So community happy, more prosperity, each family or person of that community get benefit. If communities suffer, each member of the community suffer. So that's the nature. Now today, particularly now today, the new reality, I think firstly, because of the population. And secondly, global economy. National boundary is not much relevant. Then ecology. Again, no national boundary. Whole world, just like one entity, right? One body. So that's the new reality. So according to that reality, I think our century-old concept, we and they, divided, and take care only we, not there. And sometimes they described as an enemy. And with that sort of concept, war. War means mobilized violence, and also something like legalized violence. Few individuals take others' life, we call murder, illegal, go to prison, sometimes death sentence. But killing thousands of people, sometimes we call hero matter. I think that since 1,000 years, I think one of the worst thing of human beings, I think history. Human beings having history, I think war. We human beings, and particularly now these days, because of our intelligence, technology, I think human, violence is extremely dangerous. So all these come the concept we and they. Now today, this new reality, as I mentioned earlier, the global issue as well as global sort of economy and also the human population, and these, according to these reality, we Asian, heavily our future, our prosperity, our development, much depend on West, or Africa. So the other continent, their future also depend on Asia. So interconnected, interrelated. That's the reality. So according to this new reality, destruction of your neighbor is destruction of yourself. So the very concept of we and they, according new reality, I think out of date. We have to think whole world as one family. So, according to that new reality, the concept of sense of global responsibility is something very relevant. How to develop that kind of, feeling of responsibility? As I mentioned earlier, not by force, but by voluntarily. The one, as I mentioned earlier, looking the reality, that brings you new attitude. Usually we just think me, like that. And we look more holistic way, then you can see there's something different reality. Then other thing, that's the basis of sense of responsibility, global responsibility. That's warm-heartedness. Someone dying here, you feel you have to remain indifferent. Right? Remain indifferent. Indifferent. It's not, I think, not human way. Even animal. Some of their own member of the community or herd, right, dying. It's particularly like elephant. One of their member die. The elephant remain like that. And we are human beings. Someone suffer. We cannot remain indifferently. Yeah. So that is that feeling comes from the sense of love, compassion, affection. So not only the intelligent side, but also the warm-heartedness side brings is a certain, certain sense, right? Certain sort of feeling. So compassion is, I think, seed of the sense of responsibility, sense of global responsibility. Then knowledge, brain, brings the necessity of that kind of sense of responsibility. Then combine these two things. Then I think a genuine sense of global responsibility can develop. So, whether my spiritual brother Tudo agree or not, I usually approach these things without touching religion, but simply through our common sense and according our, basic human values. So that I usually call the ethics of secular ethics. So irrespective whether believer or non-believer, everyone, need compassion, and everyone can develop this kind of moral ethics or this kind of affection. This is the essence of moral ethics.
And yes, I think we need a new paradigm, which is also an old paradigm. Learning to know that we belong together. Learning to know that the only way we will ever be able to survive is together. The only way we can be human together. The only way we can be free is together. It seems so simple. And we wonder why we have taken so long to learn the simple lesson that God created us for togetherness. And we know that why there is so much instability in our world is that some have too much when others have too little. And God thought we would learn to know that it is better to share than for one group to have more than they can even enjoy. And we need to say to the world, and you, especially you young people, must say to us oldies, we will not win so-called wars against terror as long as there are conditions in so many parts of the world that make people desperate. It seems so simple. And His Holiness is saying, each one of us, so rightly, so profoundly, so simply, each one of us has to develop this sense of responsibility for the other. Because the other is my sister, is my brother, is a member of my family. And God says, I hope one day you, my children, will learn that very simple lesson.
Different concept of political system, economy system, I think different culture, different races, different age. But there is one common thing to everyone. That is, everyone want happy life. Do not want suffering. And one important thing is, everyone have right, every right to achieve happy life. I think very purpose of life, I believe, happy life. So basically, you see, everyone want happy life, do not want suffering. So everyone have every right to overcome suffering. So I think sense of concern to oneself, because of I want happy life, I do not want suffering, I have right to overcome suffering. So on that basis, we develop the sense of concern to oneself. There's nothing to expectation. If I take care myself, I give me something to me. No such idea. But simply, I have the feeling of I, self. And with that, I want happy life. I do not want suffering. On that basis, we develop sense of care, oneself. So others similar. And then difference is one is just a simple one, single one. Others, 6 billion. the right of 6 billion is more important, or just one single person's right is more important. And furthermore, 6 billion happy, one single person automatically will be happy. If 6 billion human beings suffer, you cannot escape. So that's the way to think. To develop sense of concern about others. So, if individual develop sense of concern of other, then your own problem appears insignificant. Otherwise, think just oneself, not other. Then even small problems appears something unbearable. Because think just me, oneself, your whole mind becomes very narrow. Think others, your mind open, has vast way, wise. So that makes differences.
20世紀の科学の最大の発見は、私は DNA の発見とその働きが分かったということであります。そしてすごいことが分かりました。どんなことが分かったかと言いますと、カビも虫も昆虫も植物も動物も人間も、全ての生きとし生けるものは全く同じ遺伝子暗号を使っているということが分かったんです。でこれは、全ての生き物は地球の歴史から見るとみんな兄弟や、姉妹であります。そして一つの元の命、大きな命につながっている可能性があると思います。だからこそ私どもは人と人とが愛し合ったり助け合ったり、そして人を思う、あるいは人だけじゃなくて動植物を、あるいは地球を思う心が必要ではないかと思っております。したがって芸家が説かれております。あるいは偉大な宗教が説いてこられたことが科学の言葉を通してもだんだん理解できる時代に入っているというのが21世紀の特徴であります。したがって私は遺伝子には利己的遺伝子ではなくて利他的な遺伝子もある。これをぜひ見つけたいと思っております。
What you do to the smallest of my creatures, you do unto me. So it says in the teachings of my Christian faith. If you love me, feed my sheep. Another of the teachings of the simple man known as Jesus of Nazareth. I am also incensed by the fact that the majority of those slaughtered every day in our world are the littlest of God's creations. Babies, little gifts from God, precious morsels of life, pure, sweet, helpless babies, condemned to death by man, some only minutes after being born. In the midst of plenty, according to the World Hunger Report, 842 million of my brothers and sisters starved to death. That report states that by the year 2020, HIV will have killed 20% of an African workforce, mostly agricultural workers. 650,000 dead, most of them women and children. 650,000. That's a mind-blowing statistics. The latest report from the Lancet Medical Journal, using credible methodology, reported 650,000 Iraqi civilians, most of them women and children, have died since the invasion of Iraq. Doesn't Mr. Bush know that America has 45 million hungry people of which 17 million are children, and that the number of homeless families in England has topped 100,000 for the first time last year. India, with nuclear capabilities, head counts so vast in that vast country are difficult to track, yet we know that thousands and millions, not thousands, are starving, again, mostly women and children. And still, 40,000 children die per day, more than 14 million yearly. These are the realities in terms of life. Every 6 seconds, somewhere in our world, a child dies of hunger and preventable diseases. It is time to turn this unbearable situation of pain and death around. It is time to force governments to be accountable for the suffering of the innocent. It is time to stop using the name of the Creator, whatever one calls the Creator, God, Allah, Buddha, Brahma, the Great White Father, etc., as a reason to kill and destroy. Our common humanity demands of all of us dedication, hard work, and courage to change the horrors perpetrated in our world every day. And this is my dream. I dreamt of a world without sorrow. I dreamt of a world without hate. I dreamt of a world of rejoicing and woke to find Christ at my gate. I dreamt of a world without hunger. I dreamt of a world without war. I dreamt of a world full of loving and woke to find Allah at my door. I dreamt of a world without anger. I dreamt of a world without pride. I dreamt of a world of compassion and woke to find Buddha at my side. I dreamt of a world of tomorrow. I dreamt of a world set apart. I dreamt of a world full of glory and woke to find my Creator in my heart.
I think negative side, today's problem, including Iraq problem, and the Darfur sort of sufferings, these are symptoms of past mistake. I think mistake or negligence in the 20th century, some maybe even 19th century. So similarly, if we start effort with vision, then positive result may materialize in end of this century or beginning of next century.
Well, peace begins with me, and I don't think any human being is completely nonviolent, and especially not me, because I get very violent thoughts at times when I see children being hurt. But I have to work on myself sometimes second to second, minute to minute, hour by hour, day by day, to transform the anger that I feel into something positive that can be taken out and used to help and not destroy. Well, you can't work for peace unless you work for justice. And you can't work for justice unless you work for peace. They are twins. So you can't achieve peace without having justice in your heart and compassion in your heart. They go together. If there's a problem in my work, I usually have to go to the mirror and look in that mirror, because the problem is usually me. So I have to remove me from the work, because that could involve ego. And children don't have egos. Instilling the truth in children is difficult. And trying to instill not being afraid is also very difficult. Because the truth is that they do live in a pretty frightening world. My children grew up amidst terrorism. They had the terrorism of the terrorist organizations, And they also had the terrorism of the legal army of Britain. Yet I could manage with my teaching. I mean, we used to go to bed at night, there would be bombs going off and bullets being fired, and you were terribly frightened of taking your child into town. I went into town one day with my daughter, and there was a bomb going off, and we were being directed, and I ran right into a wall with my little girl. Turned around, and her nose was all bloodied. But if I'd shown fear to her then, even though I felt extremely frightened, I would have instilled fear in my child. So I had to get myself calm enough to be able to not let her be afraid. And that's all we can do for our children right now, because anybody who says how to make a child not afraid, I don't know how you do that, because they live in a very frightening world. But if you can try to instill courage. Fear is very contagious, but so's courage. Courage is also very contagious. Teach them to be courageous. And teach them, I don't know how I did it. When I look back on it now and all the years that I was mothering in the middle of a war and managed to keep my children balanced, it was by my own inner calmness. I think that's what worked for me. I can only speak for me. And if you bring your children up that way, they automatically become courageous.
When something happens that is bad, when it happens to an individual, the individual has, as it were, three options on how to deal with that awful thing. When a husband and a wife quarrel, I hear that happens sometimes. They can do one of three things. They can pretend it has not happened. And the husband can bring a box of chocolates and flowers and pretend nothing happened yesterday. This is the option of let us forget. People say, let bygones be bygones. Unfortunately, bygones have a very bad habit of not becoming bygones. They come back to haunt you. If it is an individual who has had a bad experience and they try to forget it, they may sometimes remove it from their consciousness, but it will go underneath into their subconscious. And one day, this ghost rises. But people still try to do that. Let us forget. They usually say, let us forget and forgive. The other way, which is actually the more frequent way, is for someone to say, I am going to pay back in the coin you gave me, an eye for an eye. a tooth for a tooth. That is a possible way of dealing with an offense, with something that has hurt you. Nations try the same. When they have had a bad history, a painful history, some have said, let us forget the past. And they have what they call a blanket amnesty or a general amnesty. It is more like a general amnesia. They try. And they discover, hey, you can't do that to the past. It comes back and it haunts you. Hasn't Santayana said, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it? We said, no, we won't pretend that awful things did not happen in our past. And we also said, no, we won't pay back. The third way in which an individual, a community, a nation can deal with the past is to look the beast in the eye. Frequently, it requires that we use what are some of the most difficult words in most languages. I am sorry. I am sorry. I don't know what that is in Japanese, but I know that I find those words difficult to say in Xhosa, in the privacy of our bedroom, with nobody else there, just my wife and myself. Difficult to say, sorry, forgive me. And yet, that is the most effective way. And that is the way we tried in our country. We said, no, we're not going to pretend it did not happen. No, we're not going to try and pay back. We're going to try and walk the path of looking at this truth, horrible things that happened. We gave him drugged coffee. We shot him in the head. And we burnt his body. And it takes 9 hours for a human body to burn. And whilst the human body was burning here, we were having a barbecue, drinking beer, and cooking different meat, human flesh here, cow flesh here. Awful things happened in our country. We said, yes, we are going to try to look that past squarely in the eyes. We are going to open the wound. We are going to cleanse the wound. And we are going to pour the balm over the wound and hope that way it will heal. We're 12 years from 1994. We have many, many problems, but the world still is amazed at the stability there is in South Africa, where you would have expected that by now people would say, no, we really think we ought to pay back. We remember, they used to have signs that read, natives, black people, and dogs not allowed, telling us that they thought black people were really like dogs. Does it work? Well, look at it. Look at the alternatives. Go to Northern Ireland, where the eye for an eye principle works. Has it brought peace? No. Look at the Middle East. The way of retribution, of paying back, does not give you security. The reprisal against the suicide bomber does not stop suicide bombers ever coming again. It is the surest way of having a suicide bomber again. Suicide bomber, reprisal, counter-reprisal, counter-reprisal, and it just goes on and on and on. You have what is called retributive justice. We said there is another kind of justice, restorative justice. Restorative justice says you care as much for the perpetrator as for the victim. You say the perpetrator retains his capacity to become a better person. You say, we don't believe that once a murderer, always a murderer. Restorative justice says, we believe in the possibilities of the future. We believe that people can change. We believe that people can become better. We believe that enemies can in fact become friends. It has happened in South Africa. If it could happen there, there is no reason why it cannot happen any and everywhere in the world. We in South Africa have something that we call, it is very difficult to render into English. We call Ubuntu, the essence of being human. Ubuntu says a person is a person through other persons. I cannot be a human being in isolation. I need other human beings in order for me to become a human being. And so it says, you and I need one another, for we are created for interdependence. We are created for togetherness. We are created ultimately for being family. And that is going to be the only way ultimately that we will survive in this world. That is the only way in which we will prosper together. That is the only way we will be secure together. What are the chances of it happening? Well, I said, if it can happen once, then it means it can happen twice. It can happen 3 times. It can happen, yes, it can happen. And God depends on you and you and you. God says, my children, how can you treat one another in this fashion? How can you spend so many billions on weapons of destruction when a small fraction of those budgets would ensure that my children, your brothers, your sisters, had clean water to drink, had enough food to eat, would afford a good education, an adequate health care scheme. I need you to help me. Help me so that my dream can come true. My dream is that my children will wake up and know that they belong in one family, the human family, God's family. And God says, I have no one except you to help me realize my dream of a world of laughter, a world of compassion, a world of gentleness, a world of caring. Help me. Help me. Help me. Sometimes I say, I'm so glad I'm not God. You know, because you see, God has to acknowledge all of us as God's children. Bin Laden, George Bush, all of us, even I. And God says, oh, dear me, are they really my children? Well, it is so important for us to know that religion is morally neutral. religion is in a sense neither good nor bad. It is how it gets to influence you. You know, I use the example, I say, it is like a knife. A knife on the table is morally neutral. I take that knife, I cut up bread for sandwiches. It is good. The knife is good. I take that knife, I stick it in your guts. The knife is bad. And so, with religion, Christianity has given us a Martin Luther King Jr. It has given us a Mother Teresa. It has given us, and we can go on, about all the wonderful people that Christianity has produced. But we can equally say the Ku Klux Klan in America uses the cross as its symbol. And what do? They lynch African Americans. They are racist. You can go on. Apartheid was supported not by pagans. It was supported by people who went to church every Sunday. The Holocaust in Germany, the people who were responsible for it were not pagans, they were Christians. The people who fight in Northern Ireland are not pagans, they're Christians. It is not the faith, it is the adherence. And the adherents, my dear professor, are people who are able to work together and are also people who are incapable of working together. Will they ever become united? They are united sufficiently in many instances to achieve their particular goals. And we hope, that one day Christendom will become one as it was at the beginning. But maybe we are going to have to wait until the second coming of Jesus Christ. It seems people have a difficulty. And especially in times of great change, people are not able to handle diversity, complexity. They like simplistic answers. And that is why you get ethnic cleansing. I don't like that which is different. It is different in its ethnicity. It is different in the language it uses. It must be different in all kinds of ways. And it must therefore be eliminated. And so we find, now we have a justification for our existence. We can fight, this terrible thing. Islam. It is a religion that produces, so they say, these terrorists. Now, have you ever heard anybody say Christianity is a religion that produces terrorists? There are terrorists in Ireland, but they never call them Christian terrorists. They will call them maybe IRA or whatever. Not Christian. The people who bombed Oklahoma, they were Christians. And that was a terrorist act. But they didn't say, Christianity produces these creatures. No. But they do it. They've done it. And we are the ones who've got to stand up and say, no. There are good Christians, there are bad Christians. There are good Muslims, there are bad Muslims.
In our life, as we go through our life, we are touched by various people. Some of them, the names you will never know. Like my Auntie Bridie. Bridie Dunn, beautiful woman. And her son Danny, my cousin, handsome, 6'4", beautiful Irishman, from a family of 8. My Aunt Bridie had 8 children. And Danny was the star of the 8 because he wanted to be a doctor. And so he was attending Queen's University, pre-med, and at the weekends he worked in a pub for extra money because the family was poor. Coming home from work one evening, he became an eye for an eye victim and was riddled to death by the Ulster Defence Unit, Protestant paramilitary organization, with the sign of the cross. They did an actual sign of the cross. And as my Auntie Bridie opened the door, Danny fell into her arms. At the funeral, media people can be very cruel. A media person said to my aunt, "How do you feel?" I felt such anger that they would even ask my aunt this question. And I wasn't prepared for her answer. She turned and looked at the media person and she said, "I am so glad that I am the mother of Danny and not the mother of the man who killed him."
Now, the problem is, what's the concept of one religion, one truth. And that, in the past, it is very, relevant and important when people from different traditions remain more or less isolated. Like India, now today, world heavily interconnected. So like India, 1,000 years, different traditions live together. So in the terms of the society, there's no longer one truth, one religion is relevant. In the society level, several truths, several religions is a reality. So now today, we need, at least 2,000-year-old India's tradition, the pluralism of religion. That I think we need. So, when we find differences in the philosophical field, I think usually I share with my friends in many occasions, what is the purpose of this different tradition, this different philosophy? Same purpose, to help humanity. So then, no problem.
I sometimes wonder why we human beings find it so difficult to share. God has created us with a vast range of differences. Really, in order for us to know that no one person can ever be self-sufficient. I have sometimes wondered, why are we upset that, if I am a Christian, that the Dalai Lama is a Buddhist? Is God any less glorified by the fact that a Mahatma Gandhi is Hindu? Do we really think God says, oh, you know, the Dalai Lama, he's such a wonderful guy. What a pity he's not a Christian. And so, you know, Dalai Lama, Mahatma Gandhi, I wish I could let you come into heaven, but poor guys, you have to become Christians first. Oh, nonsense. I mean, total nonsense.
Ultimately, as Buddha stated, oneself is one's own master. So ultimately, you have to work. There are helpers, thousands, 100,000 good people, warm-hearted people. So you have a lot of helpers. But main work on your own shoulder. For that reason, you should not lose any hope there. You should be optimistic and self-confidence, according to my own experience, and also like Nelson Mandela or Bishop Tutu. In spite of many difficulties, I think overwhelming difficulties, they never lost their self-confidence. So we too. So therefore, self-confidence is extremely important.
最後に広島の町、広島の人々、あるいはもう少し広げれば日本に何を期待し、私のようにどういうことをすればいいかということのサジェッションをそれぞれの方にいただきたいというふうに思います。
I don't know. Broadly speaking, the other day I met one Japanese writer, I responded, or I just expressed one lady, I expressed, American one time is what called Peace Corps, somewhere. Peace Corps. I think that kind of sort of volunteer worker from here, from Japan, go different countries and with the spirit of, I think reconciliation, and mainly your skill. Go different area, particularly like Latin America and also Africa. Go these places and help them in practical level, health, education, and also in Africa and also even India, the problem of AIDS. More volunteer. I think volunteering. Volunteering, go more area. Since you, one of the, I think the much developed one Asian country. So now your experience, your skill, share with more people instead of staying here and complaining. Go more place, more area, help them and carry your good spirit. That's my wish. Whether I implement or not, up to you.
Yes. You have already, as I said, given the world a wonderful example of being able to rise from the ashes. You are, as a nation now, part of the G8, the big ones. Many, many countries, in a way, are devastated, as you here were devastated by the atom bomb, are devastated by poverty, by disease. By an international economic system that is fundamentally unjust. I would hope that your experience of the injustice of atom bombs falling on you would give you the passion which you already have, of wanting to help others rise from their ashes. So Japan ought to be in the forefront in saying, for instance, cancel all unjust international debts that so many countries bear as a burden. I think that would be one of the most crucial services that you can perform to help have a more just international system. But I hope too that Japan would not support unjust wars. The war in Iraq was unjust, was immoral.
There's an old expression in Ireland that says, I thought I was very poor because I had no shoes. And then I met a man who had no feet. So, I mean, to say myself, I'm a very flawed human being. I'm not perfect, I'm a sinner. But when you go out into the world and you hold a child that's dying, the heaviest bone is the skull. So you have to support this little head while the eyes are looking up at you and they're actually saying to you, why? Why is this happening to me? In In Japan, you have now are one of the, I think you're the second biggest economy, which is phenomenal to think of where you've come from and where you are. Go out and look for one individual. One is a huge number. If you can help one individual, one child, you will then help 10. Because in the circle of that one person, there will be 10 others that one person will educate. Talking about peace is wonderful, and praying for peace is wonderful, and marching for peace is wonderful, and talking peace all the time. It means nothing unless you're actually working on a daily basis to make the lives of your brothers and sisters, because that's what they are. Archbishop Tutu talked about it. We are one human family. We shouldn't even say Japanese or Irish or Chinese or whatever. We should find that one person, and in that one person, you will change 10 others.
周りの人々、世界の多くの困っている人たちに手を差し伸べる、それが私ども一人一人がすべきだということを改めて感じました。そして私ども一人一人は力が弱い、あるいは小さいわけですけれども、私は人間には非常に無限ともいえる可能性が秘められているということを、この3人の受賞者の話を通して聞きました。人間の遺伝子は暗号は 99.9% 以上同じであります。ということは、全ての人に私は素晴らしい可能性が残っている。それを私どもが知って自覚して、そして明日からでも一歩でも世界の平和のために、そして周りの人のために、行動していきたいというふうに思っております。
Hiroshima International Peace Summit Joint Statement, November the 2nd, 2006. We've gathered in Hiroshima to reinforce the city's spirit of forgiveness and passion for peace in order to establish a nuclear-free world. In the face of the enormity of the devastation wrought on it by atomic catastrophe, the people of Hiroshima experienced the utter horror of war and sought a new solution, rebuilding a city that has become the world's premier center of dialogue for peace. We wish to draw attention to its message of forgiveness and non-revenge for all humankind. This, the actual place of pain of the world's worst destructive weapon, is a dynamic source of inspiration for putting not one's own nation, city, or group first, but for putting the global human community and the entire planet first. We affirm and call on all to consider that
destruction of your neighbor and even your enemy is destruction of yourself. A crisis anywhere in health, education, human rights, care of children, or the environment has repercussions everywhere. Therefore, accept of global responsibility and independence is essential both for your own well-being and for the benefit of others. Since we are one family of sisters and brothers and one body of humanity, we must transform indifference to pain of others, of children, of the infirm and of the aged, into global concern. The problem starts with oneself, and so the solution also starts with oneself. All from childhood, no need to learn that now genocide